Hello, everybody, and welcome to Upshift Creek, the F1 podcast for long-term fans and newcomers alike. I am Ollie Pettigrew, and joining me, as they will join me throughout the season, I have my former co-host from right this minute, Nick Calderon. Nick, welcome to the show.
What's up? I'm happy. Ollie, we talked about doing an F1 podcast for years. I'm glad we're finally doing it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that we're also bringing on Ryan Sandler, good friends to both of us, also a friend of the show from right this minute. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's so great to be here. Honestly, not sure why I'm here because I know absolutely nothing about Formula One.
That is why you're here. Nick and I have been watching Formula One since we were knee-high to a grasshopper. I was watching F1 back in the days of Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell. Nick, you've been about the same, right?
Yeah. I was probably the end of the 90s, early 2000s when I really got into it, the whole Michael Schumacher era. And a friend of mine said, you know, how come you don't watch F1? You like NASCAR? And I guess I didn't really think about it. I didn't know much about F1 at the time. F1 really wasn't viewed. I couldn't see it. But once I started to get into it and I saw how the cars were just on that knife edge, the look that they were about to fly off the track at every second and the high tech of it all, that's what got me into it.
And then Ryan, so have you watched Drive to Survive, Ryan? Did we get in that way?
You know, I think I'd started to, but I was introduced to Formula One about probably last season. I kind of started to get into it. You showed it to me. What I love is that every weekend it's like just the third act of a Top Gun movie for a good 2 or 3 hours, which is just your adrenaline is riding real high. But no, I didn't really get into the Drive to Survive because it was already 3 seasons past, and doing that was watching the current season was tripping me up. It didn't make sense to me.
Anything.
Yeah.
You can jump in the Drive to Survive at any season at any time. You're really not missing anything. And it is, I think, Ollie, agree or disagree, I think it's a great way for newcomers to get introduced to the sport and learn a little bit of the drama and the politics of it.
100%. I would say it's the best way to do it. And I would say it's the number 2 because the best way to do it is to listen to this podcast. I mean, I got Ryan into F1. We were down at the pool. There was a race going on and we went back to his place and I had like a long stick. And I was just pointing at the guy, okay, you got to watch this guy, then watch this guy. And this guy's going to pit because of his tires are coming down. And like Ryan was like, oh, this is much more fun. This is the great way to watch F1. People should just
truly fascinating. Truly fascinating. When you have an expert walking you through something you've never experienced before, it really makes it way more accessible, way more fun. That's for sure.
Yeah. Honestly, I think what like Nick's saying is if you are listening to this and you haven't watched F1 and you want to, I'd say watch the very first episode of season 1 of Drive to Survive and then just skip to the latest season and it'll keep you completely up to date on what's going on, all the drama that's going on, because really, it has shown us that, I mean, Nick and I, even all these decades we've been watching it, we didn't know as much as we knew until we really got into the meat of F1. I think the big part of that is Liberty Media. The Americans bought it like about 4 or 5 years ago, suddenly freed up everything. Everybody's been talking about it. It's the kind of thing that we're all now so invested in, not just who's going to finish first or second, who's finishing 15th, who's finishing last, you know, just that little point that's going to keep someone in the race. The drama of F1 has just become so much fun.
Well, that's the whole point of it too, you know, because sometimes, honestly, and I'm a big fan, F1 races can be a little bit boring, especially if you have a Max Verstappen running away with it and he's 10 seconds down the road and first place is locked up from the 3rd lap. When you start to learn the drama of those midfield races and the teams with lesser budgets and the teams that are suddenly doing well when they weren't, and those midfield, those mid-season changes that they bring to the track, that's when the joy really starts to unlock and when you start to understand the strategy of it.
Yeah, man, I found myself screaming because someone scored their first ever point in F1 after 3 years. You know what I mean? You just didn't care about that stuff back in the day. Now you were like, yes, he's finally got his first point. Woo! The pressure is off.
I didn't even understand the fact that there was a point system. I thought you got to go fast and you got to get first. And if you ain't first, you're last. That's what really kept me going, man.
Well, it's all got interesting. You score points if you're in the top 10. It got a little bit more interesting because they brought in these sprint races, which is kind of new in the last couple of years, which kind of splits up the points as well. You can also get points if you're in the top 10 and you get fastest lap. But don't worry, we'll get into the weeds of that when it actually matters. Let's get back to this season. And I think the best place to start off is the newcomers, all right? Not every year that you get newcomers. And this year, we've got 3, or actually 4. We'll get back to that. But it's our rookies. Let's start off with Oscar Piastri, okay? He's Australian. He's got some credibility. He was F3 champ, F2 champ. In fact, he won the F2 championship on his rookie season, all right? This guy is a legit driver. It all just got a bit interesting, though, because Alpine announced him as a driver, and then he took to Twitter and went, no, I'm not. And then McLaren said, yeah, he's ours. And he ended up at McLaren.
See, and right there, I'm not sure if I like him. I can't tell if he just really played the game very well. His manager, his agent is Mark Webber, Formula 1 driver, Australian driver. And I don't know if I like him yet or not because he played that game. And maybe I'm just envious that he played the game so well. I feel like he did owe Alpine something, but maybe he didn't. I'm conflicted, and he's just going to have to prove it to me on the track.
Yeah. It's all been a bit cagey, haven't it, that story? I guess we've lost Danny Rick, our resident Australian, so at least we've got another one in. So we'll see if he can be as entertaining as Danny Rick. See if he can grow the moustache.
I was going to say, he's got great hair. That's really what I look for. That's what I look for in a driver. Great hair.
Great hair and great personality. And I don't know if, Holly, if you caught up with this season of Drive to Survive, one I did notice, they gave a bigger send-off to Danny Rick on that show than they gave to Sebastian Vettel. And Nick Latifi, who? The poor guy was never even mentioned. He's out of F1 now, and not even by Nick Latifi from Drive to Survive producers.
He was backed by a billionaire. I think he'd do okay. I mean, if they did an extra episode about the amount of time somebody went into the wall, Latifi, you'd have a great episode. Okay, look, moving on. We've got another newcomer. This one, pretty big deal for the US, but you finally got an American driver back in, Logan Sargent. Now, he was Rookie of the Year in F2 in 2022, but he finished 4th. He does have some wins under his belt, but it was almost a struggle for him to get enough super license points to be able to come into F1. Do you think he's got enough experience to be out on track, Nick?
I can't fairly say yes or no to that, but I will say that I think Logan Sargent is on the grid this year because of the American support generated by Drive to Survive, in part generated by Liberty Media's involvement, generated by now 3 American races on the schedule. I think Logan Sargent, the American, is there because of all that, to feed the need of the American fans, not to take anything away from the kid. To be fair, I don't know much of anything about his previous successes or lack thereof. Once again, he's going to have to prove it on the track, and it's going to be very difficult to do in a Williams.
In a Williams. Exactly. It's like, that being said, they are faster than they were. I mean, honestly, you go back 5 years, Williams was just a liability. But weirdly enough, Ryan, Williams is one of the most famous, winningest teams in the history of F1.
Yeah,
they're just going through a bad patch.
Back in my day, they're all sponsored by cigarette sponsorships. So I don't even know anymore.
Back in the day, winners when they took their photos on the podium with cigarettes hanging out.
That's right. Yeah. Ciao.
Absolutely. That's the good old days. Except before safety was invented in F1. Thank God that's it. Next up, the non-rookie, Nick de Vries. He's coming for AlphaTauri. Now, the thing is, Nick de Vries, he's another Dutch driver like Max Verstappen. He's the 2010, 2011 karting championship, the 2019 F2 champion. And then he was in the same graduating class as Albon and Russell and Lando. They all got drives. He did not. He went over to do Formula E. I think he was driving with Mercedes at Formula E. And then he became the 2020-2021 Formula E champion. So this guy, he knows how to drive. He just didn't have a seat for 4 years, and now he's in.
I think he's got, out of the rookies, I think he's got the most potential. I know everybody is whistling about Oscar Piastri and how great he is, but I don't put any merit into that until I actually see the guy drive. But de Vries is a little bit different. Like you say, you've seen him pull down that Formula E championship. Yeah, different kind of racing, but still, he played in the big leagues, and I think he's got the most potential out of all of the rookies.
Yeah, and now, Ryan, I don't know if you remember, he was the Italian Grand Prix last year. He got pulled in last minute as a super
incredible.
sub.
Incredible.
And yeah, he scored points on his debut. He said he could barely lift his arms and he could barely move his head by the end of the race and still put points on the board. So you got to...
It was incredible driving. Incredible.
Yeah. But that's why I think that's why Red Bull and AlphaTauri, Helmut Marko saw that and they were like, lock him down.
Yeah.
We will take him and then we will crush him later. And then he will leave F1 in tears.
God. Oh my God.
We do have one more we were not expecting. So late news that came in, Lance Stroll has gone and stacked it while cycling apparently, and has caused himself injuries. But even today, I was checking the latest news just 3 hours ago. Aston Martin are being very cagey about just how badly injured he is. They reckon 1 or 2 races he's going to be out, which means we've got Felipe Drugovich. He's a Brazilian driver, I believe, current Formula 2 champion. So he's getting that call up. He's on that sort of, he's got momentum after coming at F2. He's only had a little bit of time in an F1 car. It'll be interesting to see what he can do. And also, what kind of pressure that puts on Lance while, Dad's paying the bills for this dude.
Tremendous pressure. And last I heard, Lance Stroll had 2 broken wrists, kind of like over the handlebars, come crashing down. Now, how do you drive an F1 car if you even have a sprained wrist? I have no idea. I think he's going to be out longer than they're saying. And I think Aston Martin is probably the most exciting story of preseason so far. I know you can't believe what you see coming out of preseason, but the Aston Martins look fast. And it's exciting because Fernando Alonso, my goodness, would it be fun to see Fernando duking it out towards the top of the grid. And now all of a sudden, Felipe Drugovich in the car. He's a current F2 champion. That's right there, right on the doorstep of F1 in a decent car.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm with you.
I bet you Logan Sargent wished that wrists were broken a little sooner,
They can't just tape their arms to the steering wheel and just let them have it.
Hey, I remember Schumacher racing with broken legs, man. These guys are absolute monsters when it comes to doing stuff like that. And we'll get back to testing it a little bit. Before we do, though, something else that's new every season, we get new liveries, unless, of course, you're Red Bull, whereas you look exactly the same as you did the year before. I've got the liveries in front of me. Do you guys have a personal favorite? Because I know I do.
I mean, I like the direction that Haas took, going with the inverse, the black on the white. I mean, I don't think they're a great team, but I liked how their car's looking. So there's that.
I root for them. I root for Gunther Steiner.
I do.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I'm having a hard time picking a favorite. I part of the reason why I got into F1 was because I just thought the cars looked cool, all of them. However, if I had to pick a favorite, once again, the Aston catches my eye. They went with this. They still have the green Aston color, but it's more of a metallic look. I'm digging the yellow, the highlight yellow down the side. And you gotta love Red Bull because I'm a Red Bull fan, and that brand just sticks out wherever you go. And for Mercedes, back in black, that's always a good thing.
Well, I was going to say that Mercedes showing up in black. I think there was some squeaky bum time from the rest of the teams, remembering what happened the last time that black car came out and just absolutely dominated. But for me, it's the Alfa Romeo, that black and red. I don't know. I mean, I liked the red and white that they had the previous season. I thought that was sexy as hell, but I could definitely go out on a date with that Alfa Romeo. That would be a short run thing, but I would have a good time.
And if we're talking about worst liveries, I like the fact that McLaren just went with the Simon approach on all of their wheels. I don't know if you've...
It just looks like chrome, right?
Yeah. No, it's like the Google logo. It's 4 colors, like the game Simon from back in the day.
Or that little spinning pizza wheel of death that you get sometimes from...
Yeah, well, let's hope that that's not McLaren's season. They haven't had the greatest time recently. One thing that's interesting, actually, I did see this the other day, is that McLaren is testing this new... basically, they're putting Kindles on their panels and on their helmets, this Kindle technology that means every 45 seconds it'll switch a sponsor. So they don't have to put a sponsor in one particular place and you're committed to it. They can actually cycle as the race goes through. So there's a new bit of tech that's actually turned up. We'll see if it pays off for them, because every piece of tech you put on a car adds weight. Once you add weight, that messes with your times.
Well, what's interesting about that, Ollie, is McLaren already seems to be struggling to get sponsorship already. Their cars have gotten slower. There are already blank spots on the car. And now they want to create like 4 times as many blank spots to fill. I don't know if it's, a gimmick to get sponsorship. Maybe it'll work in their favor. But it seems like sometimes these cars and these teams have a hard time getting the sponsorships that they need. It costs a lot of money to play in Formula One.
Well, actually, that's a perfect segue for getting us into testing. So back in the day, the teams that had all the money, be it the Ferraris or the McLarens when they were doing well, or Mercedes, they could just spend whatever money they wanted on development. They could throw their cars out on the track and put them in the wind tunnels and everything else. But in the more recent years, to make Formula One more cost-effective, they've brought in the cost cap, which means, well, that's what makes F1 testing kind of interesting, because it really is the first time that the teams get to figure out whether or not the car works. Because we remember what happened last year. All the brand new rules came in and the ground effect, and then we had Mercedes bouncing down the track and was like causing back injuries to the drivers. Fortunately, we haven't seen any porpoising, but we have seen some gains, Nick, from the other teams.
I cannot be more excited about the Aston Martin early looks. I know everybody's like, oh, it's preseason. You can't. Everybody's sandbagging. People are holding back. Fuel loads. On and on and on. I get it. But just let me dream a little bit. Not that I'm a huge Aston Martin Mark fan, but I just can't stop thinking about how fun it would be to see Fernando Alonso, his self-branded bad guy image, in a fast Aston, running the tailpipes of George and Lewis. That would be so fun. At 41 years old, Ollie, he's your age.
I know. See, officially could still be an F1 driver. Just FYI. I hope. But no, let's look at the most times gained since last year's testing. Because basically, with Red Bull, as if ain't broke, don't fix it. So they've got an evolution of their car and they're still quick. But Williams have found 2.378 seconds. That's a big deal. Aston Martin, like you're saying, 2.3 seconds.
How much did Williams find?
2.378 seconds.
That is a lot. Now that means they won't get lapped until like maybe lap 40 instead of 1. Got it.
Yeah. Unless, Latifi could get, he'd be on the wall on lap 5, so it didn't matter. Yeah, but that's what, like Nick is saying, the Aston Martins, we were all surprised when Alonso mentioned he was leaving Alpine, where he was doing great. He was like top 6 and things like that, and said he's going over to Aston Martin to take the seat that Sebastian Vettel left open. And we thought it was crazy, but look at the Astons. Yeah, they've gained 2.3 seconds. The only team that has lost speed, Alpine. Turns out he's a genius.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And it makes you wonder, what did Alonso know, if anything, when these deals were being made? Was there some kind of information? Did somebody get into Alonso's ear and say, listen, we've cracked the code. We know what next year's car is going to do in the computer models and in the wind tunnels. It's testing super fast. If you want a good car, come with us. Maybe I don't know.
Now, what are they able to change on the car in between seasons that they're not able to work on, I guess, throughout the season? Like I don't know how marginal the changes are from season to season, or how they can tweak the cars, or what they can tweak. I don't know.
Updates come as the season goes on, but there are certain restrictions, right? The cost cap being the biggest one. There are other restrictions on the amount of engines that they can use and things like that go on. But yeah, that people are already talking about, 6 races from now, 8 races from now, when the next update package comes in. So, they've had to kind of commit to sort of one thing. They're seeing what's working in the simulator, what's not working, and they're already starting to develop what they're going to be putting on the car later. So I think the only real restriction, Nick, off the top of my head, is really just the amount of money you can spend, right?
Yeah, and I guess I'll have to say, I don't know, to Ryan's question. I don't know when you are allowed to start bringing in upgrades. Is that, Ollie, maybe this is something that we need to look into. Can you bring an upgrade race after race after race, or is it only certain races that you're allowed to bring in upgrades? I don't know.
Well, in the past, it's always been when they've developed them, because that's the amazing thing about Formula One, is they have to develop every single piece of that car. Right. You can buy an engine from a supplier, but everything else, every single thing on that car has to be designed from scratch. It's why they all look the same, but then they all look different. It's what sets it apart from NASCAR and IndyCar, where you're using kind of the same framework. This is the best engineers in the world thinking and trying to figure out, well, what's going to work? Is this brake duct going to mean that we gain that extra 0.2 of a second that makes us unbeatable? And sometimes that's exactly what happens.
And is that's something they do every season?
Yeah. So there's always development. So that at some point they'll actually stop, because Haas did it. They said, we're just going to stop in 2021. They said, we're going to stop developing this car now, halfway through the season, because we're putting all of our money and attention into next year's car, because that's where the future is. Right?
Yeah, and Ryan, too, just keep in mind, last season was a huge change. The big rules and regulations changes for the beginning of the 22 season. So there were different size wheels and ride heights and weights of the car. So a lot changed last year. So this is the second year of the most recent round of big rule changes where the manufacturers now have a baseline of what they did last year, and now they've been able to improve on it and make the cars better. So this year, well, every year is exciting. I mean, I watched
For sure.
DTS, all day long yesterday and got an emotional boner for next week.
Can you remember off the top of your head your favorite story from last year? Mine, I officially is just it's K-Mag's pole in Brazil was the one that even watching it again on YouTube, I got all the the goosebumps. I got a tear in my eye. I was so happy for that one.
I remember we were texting us for that, and it truly was a very emotional thing to see.
That was a good storyline. I'm a Science fan, so watching him get his win, that was awesome. Especially with all of the troubles and setbacks that Ferrari had coming into the beginning of the season, looking like Ferrari was going to storm to the front between tech issues and strategy issues. To see Carlos win was awesome.
For me, it's just waking up the next day and looking at all of the memes that I don't understand.
Honestly, I think that's going to become a part of the show. We've got to get into Formula Dank. If you are not on Reddit, get on Reddit and get on Reddit to become part of Formula Dank. It is, who knew that there was a whole meme culture around F1, and boy, are they bloody hilarious. Let's quickly look at the fastest laps that we got out of testing. Red Bull first, Mercedes second, Alfa Romeo third, Ferrari fourth. But kind of like Nick mentioned a little bit earlier, you can't really read too much into that. Everybody's running different fuel loads, different tire compounds. There's a certain amount of sandbagging that's going in. So we're really not going to know until we're 3 wide into the first corner exactly what's happening.
I'm a Max Verstappen fan, first and foremost. I do love everything about Red Bull, the team. I love that there's a Spice Girl on the grid with Christian Horner and his wife. I just think that's just awesome to have a Spice Girl around. Don't ask me why.
All sports are better with Spice Girls.
Exactly.
Damn right.
But that being said, I do not want to see Red Bull run away with this. I just don't. Because that just takes the fun out of it. I want to see the championship go down to the wire. That's my hope.
I mean, the year before, you can't be honest, we got maybe one of the greatest seasons of all time with a very controversial end. Had the rules been followed, 8-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, but I think last year's performance by Max was dominant, and I think it was important that it was, because it took away the asterisk on Max Verstappen world champion. There was an asterisk depending on who you were or who you were a fan of. There's no asterisk now. Underline, Max Verstappen champion, circle it.
Well, hold on a minute. I think there's going to be a lot of fans out there going, what are you talking about, Ali? Of course there's an asterisk. There's the asterisk about their spending over the cap.
Oh, sure.
Remember?
Very true.
Yeah. McLaren and Mercedes and a number of the other teams were accusing Red Bull of spending too much. They got a slap on the wrist about it. Apparently they spent too much money in catering. Now,
$25 million on Cameo. What do you want from me?
This is all coming from a Red Bull fan. They are extraordinarily fast. Their cars are extraordinarily fast. And then when you put them together with a guy like Max Verstappen, they're very difficult to beat, even for a guy like Lewis Hamilton and Toto and the Mercedes team. So with those accusations flying around, and with the verdict of, yes, they did overspend, did they just get caught overspending by a little and manage to hide the rest? Are they doing something that is making that car so unbeatable? And I'm not.
Hey, there's been shenanigans in F1 for years. We've had Spygate, we've had all kinds of stuff. People, espionage is a part of F1, and if you find a loophole, you take it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I too am looking forward to Max Verstappen taking this season. It's the equivalent of like, what if Ivan Drago just won in Rocky V, and that was the whole movie. That's basically what last season was. It made it for me almost. And I'm a huge Verstappen fan. I respect him as a driver. I like his kind of cold demeanor, and I respect his precision. He's just an incredibly precise driver. Like, it's truly fascinating to watch him. But once he's like 10 minutes ahead, I'm like, I don't give a shit. I just want to see him go into the wall again.
Yeah. And you know what, Ryan, you are expressing what a lot of people dislike about Formula One.
Oh, yeah.
And when you ask people, come on, watch this, you got to get into it. they want to see lead changes. They want to see a fight for the win.
Right.
And yeah, as soon as you get into one of those situations where somebody's off in the distance, then a new fan loses interest.
Right.
That's why the shows like DTS and podcasts and things like that are so important, to show that there is a lot more going on than just 1-2.
Right. Well, look, we're looking for a good race, and we're starting off from Bahrain. Bahrain is a pretty great track if you're looking for some action. We've had duels in the desert. We've got 3 DRS zones. It's a very fast track. This particular time around 57 laps. I'm happy we're starting here. I think it's going to be an exciting time, because I'm with you. I love the wheel-to-wheel action. That's what I love about 3 DRS zones. You just get all the people ducking in, late braking, like Danny Rick back in the days of Red Bull. And I think we're looking for a good race. This is a bold thing to ask before the season has even started, but I'm going to ask you 2 things. One, who's your pick for world champ, and who's your dark horse? Ryan, we'll start with you.
Hang on, I have to pull up and see what the actual drivers' names are. For the most part, there's so many drivers out there, almost too many, some would say. I don't know. It's tough to say. Because I haven't been invested in the races for so long. It's hard for me to pick a driver just because I don't have the history. I just know like the top 5 from Red Bull and Ferrari. But I really liked what George Russell was doing last year. He was such a good, consistent driver for Mercedes, and I really enjoyed watching him. But does he have what it takes to take the whole thing? I don't honestly have no idea. But
he could be your both if you like. He could be your dark horse for the championship.
I enjoyed watching him, and it was nice to see like someone else take spotlight for a change in that season, and it was a joy for me to watch him.
Yeah, he's good. I like him. Nick, what do you think?
Well, I am taking Max. I've liked him for years, and so yeah, I think Red Bull is going to be very difficult to beat. Definitely picking Max to win the championship. But my dark horse, I don't know, man. I'm going Fernando Alonso. How cool would that be? Just give me that storyline. Let the documentaries tumble in after that. I want to see him across all the American, night shows, late night shows, and morning shows. I want to see the Spaniard all over TV for being like, a Tom Brady-esque F1 winner.
Hey, it's happened in F1 before, man. Niki Lauda, he won a couple of times, went away, come back about the same age, and what did he do? He won as well. So honestly, I'm with you, Nick. I am all in on Alonso this year. I want it. That's a storyline I want. I have been a Lewis Hamilton fan since I read about him getting signed at the age of 11 when I was 18 years old. I've been with him since his very, very first season in F1, so I'm always going to be supporting Lewis. But I think my teeny tiny, just micro dark horse storyline that I'm gagging for is Nico Hulkenberg. The return of the Hulk. He's been in, he's been out, he's been in, he's been out. He's had more races than anyone else without a win, I believe. I honestly will throw a party. If he won a Grand Prix, good Lord, I'd lose my flipping mind.
We're going to hold you to
that. I will fly out there, guys. We will have a party.
I'm hopeful for Logan Sargent. He's been handed a difficult job as a rookie. I think the best we can hope for Logan is just to not make too many mistakes. Try and represent the Americans as best you possibly can. Don't cost Williams too much money, and do your best to not be 20th.
I'm just excited to be here, first and foremost. But also that I think there's always so many variables going into every race and every season that I'm just generally excited to get this thing started and, see where it goes. And
well, you're not going to have to wait long, mate. The first race is coming up any day now, and we've got 23 rounds to go. We're going to be talking F1 until the end of November, guys. It's going to be incredible. Look, this was great. So great to catch up with you guys. I think we got a nice little preview of what's to come in the season. Thank you so much. If you are listening to this particular podcast, you'll be able to find us talking about each race as the season goes on here at Upshift Creek. Hopefully, you won't be left Upshift Creek without a paddle. Nick, Ryan, thank you so much for talking to me. And everybody listening, we'll see you next time.